So I thought this morning, or today, for this practice, we can focus on something a little more active and work with the elements of Sun Salutation. So we'll warm up the body as we do, starting from Shavasana, and then we'll get to standing and work through those segments to start to energize and uplift the spine and the body as a whole. Okay. So a few things we'll need. We have the bolsters and the straps, so those are excellent. You can choose to use them or not. Okay, so we'll start getting nice and comfy and cozy in Shavasana. So you can rest back, and if you need something under the skull, you can place something there, or under the pelvis or under the knees. So whatever offers you comfort. Good, and just take a few moments to allow your body to settle. And then invite the mind to acknowledge or become aware of the four prominent parts of the body that are making direct contact with the ground. So the skull, upper back, pelvis, maybe it's the soles of the feet or the heels. So just taking some time to become aware of those areas. And then can you also invite the breath to aid in dropping and sinking those points of contact, allowing them to become heavy. Giving them over to gravity, allowing them to sink deeper and deeper into the ground. Sometimes what helps me is maybe exaggerating the exhalation a little more. You can exhale through an open mouth and make a little more sound with the exhalation. I like to think of this as the moment when you kind of tuck in to bed and you just let the whole body surrender into your mattress. So it's that same feeling of just letting go. And then also we want to maybe bring some attention to the areas that are not making contact or are in indirect contact with the ground. So the back of the neck, the back of the waist, the back of the knees. And much like we did with the points of contact, can you use that same process in connecting the breath to letting these areas, letting them go, letting them fall towards the ground. Good. And a big part of our practice today will be focusing on the two pillars or the two poles, the skull and the pelvis, and exploring or seeing if we can lengthen those two ends away from each other. So as you continue to rest, maybe bring some attention to maybe the skull. See if you can add in a little Lengthening of the back of the skull away from the base of the neck. You can gently, if you want, draw the chin closer towards the collarbones to offer a little more length. You can use the hands at the base of the neck and slide them up the neck to the base of the skull. And then there's also letting the head roll from side to side if you choose to bring a little more movement into your practice at this point. Good. And then at some point, if you want to bring some attention to the pelvis, the back of the pelvis, and continuing to let it sink. So there's the piece where I let it drop, let it ground, and then there's the lengthening of the pelvis away from the skull. Using the imagination to explore that lengthening of the pelvis away from the upper body. Something that I like to do just to add a bit of emphasis on that downward direction is, and this is optional if you want to bring in movement at this point or not, but if you allow the heels to dig in and then a gentle rocking of the heels or a gentle flexing and pointing of the foot. Yeah, and as you get to the pointing part, that might be a little aid in lengthening that pelvis down. Good. Yeah, that's it. That's another beautiful way to incorporate lengthening is if it feels good, you can take the arms above the head and lengthen the limbs away from each other. So be with this for as long as you like, exploring that dropping, the lengthening of the two ends. Also being sure to pay attention to the gaps or the areas that are hovering a little bit and allowing them to continue to drop towards the earth. And then at some point you can bring in a little more movement when it feels right, and that can be whatever feels good for you in this moment. It could be a little boat, it could be twisting with the soles of the feet and then letting the legs fall to one side and then the other. Yeah. Yeah, and bridge is one of the things that you can touch on to as well as you move around, because we'll use that also to warm up the spine to prep us for Sun Salutation. So in whatever movement you choose to do, whether it's the twisting, little boat rocking side to side, or bridge, Maybe pay some attention to those two ends, the skull and the pelvis. Can you feel them? What part of these ends do you feel in contact with the ground? And can you allow them to continue to drop and lengthen away from each other? Good. And whenever you do come to bridge, something that I love incorporating in specifically the rolling down in bridge to encourage that lengthening is once you peel the pelvis and the spine off and you come to whatever your top is, before you lower back down to the ground, take a moment to find that skull and upper back, allow it to settle. And as you exhale, let it go, let it become even heavier, sink even deeper, maybe a gentle sliding of the back of the skull away from the base of the neck as you start to roll down. So anchoring and lengthening in the upper body, and as you roll down, lengthening the pelvis away from the upper half. Good. Yeah, and that's it. You can place the arms in whatever position feels comfortable. Again, having the arms above the head as you roll down can offer a little extra lengthening and elongation in the spine. Good. And as you move in and out of bridge, maybe pay attention to the sensations that come up. So this may be a good marker to come back to at the end of our practice and to see if anything has changed. Yeah, that's it. And take any of the counter poses, little boat, twisting. Great. And then we'll start to add in the legs. So we'll warm up the legs a little bit. The legs and the wrists to prep us for all the standing and the lunging and all the goodness in Sun Salutation. So to start off with, what might be a good positioning of the legs are drawing one leg into the abdomen and letting the other leg extend along the ground. And this is where you can, if you choose to use the bolster to place under the pelvis, at any point as we work through the legs, you can add the bolster in, remove it, your choice. Good. Yeah. And then a few things, you can do with the leg drawn in. If you want to tap into that lengthening of the pelvis, you can rock that heel or flex and point the foot of the extended leg. And in the leg that's drawn in, a few things you could do here is circle the ankle. You can circle the leg, so right in the hip joint where the femur or the thigh bone meet the pelvis. And then there's also just a gentle, you can do a gentle jostling of that leg that's drawn in. Good. And of course, switch sides on your own time whenever it feels right. We want to maybe keep going back to dropping and lengthening the pelvis, lengthening the back of the skull away from the base of the neck. Good. Yeah, that's it. You can also add taking the leg out to its own side and then crossing. That's great. Good. And then at some point, you can, when you go back to the first side, this is where, if you choose to, you can involve the strap or use the strap. So what we can do here is maybe the leg that's drawn in extends up towards the ceiling, and the bottom leg can be bent or extended, your choice. Yeah. And then before we move the leg around, maybe take a moment to find the pelvis. Let that pelvis settle, drop, sink. And then what I find useful in encouraging the lengthening of the pelvis away from the skull is imagining that the thigh bone or the leg is also lengthening away from the pelvis and the upper body. So there's a dropping of the pelvis down, and then a lengthening of that leg away from the pelvis and up, yeah. And so what may help with that, or might be of interest to you, is sliding. You can use the hands to self-assist that lengthening and sliding the hands down the leg. Yeah, encouraging a little extra lengthening without, pulling overdoing it. But yeah, that's it. Yeah. And also the self-assist there, or the hands on the legs, offers a little more sparkle or a sense of liveliness in the legs too. Good. Yeah, and then you can start to take that leg and move it around if you choose, out to its own side or across the body. Keep checking in with that pelvis, the upper back and the skull. So can I continue to connect that out breath to the dropping and the lengthening? Good. Good. And of course, spend as much time as you like on one side and switch whenever it feels right. And then in between sides, something that you could do is extend in both legs and just take a moment and check in, compare the two sides. That's it, Sue. Yeah, you can take the legs up towards the ceiling and shake out the legs, swim the legs. Yeah. Yeah, and as you check in, just notice what your relationship to the ground is at this point in your practice? Has it changed since you first started? How do those areas that are in that indirect contact feel? Has that gap closed in any way? Good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, something else you can add in with the legs, what you're doing there, Sue, is you can even do a bit of a thumping or patting. Yeah. Again, sometimes just stimulating the legs with the hands can be a useful way of releasing the tension in the legs. Good. Yeah. And that idea of lengthening the thigh bone away from the pelvis is also useful in when you take the legs out to its own side and cross the body. Yeah. Yeah. And if you do have the leg extended, the bottom leg extended, maybe every now and then you can do that piece where you, yeah, that's it, flex and point the foot. Good. Nice. Yeah, that's such a nice, I love that sensation of exactly what you were doing there, Tama, with taking the arm above the head, either side, but if we have let's say the right leg is extended and long, and you take the right arm above the head as you take the leg out to its own side, just offers a nice little bit of an extra lengthening on the side of the body. Yeah. Good. And then when you're satisfied with the legs moving around and stretching, you can again go back to shaking out the legs, taking them up to the ceiling, give them a good shake. Again, yeah, oh yeah, or the arms, yeah, give those a good shake. This is actually a good time to, if you wanted to, add any type of circling in the wrists, any stretching in the wrists and the fingers. Yeah, if you want to use one hand to stretch the other. Yeah, the limbs play a big part in Sun Salutation. They offer us support, so it's good to give them a little love. Good. Yeah, so I can shake out the wrists. Yeah, exactly that. You can rub the hands together. You can pull the fingers behind you. Good. And then just before we come up to standing, maybe it might be of interest to you to check back in with bridge. So if you do have a bolster under the pelvis, you can remove it. Yeah, you can check in with bridge, see if anything, if your experience has changed in bridge, if any of the sensations have changed. And then another check-in could be just resting in Shavasana for a few breaths and seeing if you notice anything different. So has your relationship to the ground changed in any way? Good. And then take your time. If there's something you want to do just to finish off the portion resting back here before we come to standing. So if you want to take a twist or anything at all, and then eventually we'll make our way to standing. Good. Good. Yeah, so as you come to stand, let's take a moment to really settle the feet into the ground. Yeah, see if you can feel all parts of the foot. That's it. And then let's tap into that pelvis, the dropping of the pelvis, so the weight of the pelvis falling into the legs to feet, feet to ground. And then as a result, do you gain a sense of the lengthening of the skull and upper body upwards? Good. You can also add a little gentle pulsing of the knees to encourage the weight of that pelvis to drop. If you want to let any sound out with that, yeah, that's it. Shake out the arms. If you want to circle the wrists, wiggle the pelvis side to side, and do a little dance. Good. Good. And then maybe in your wiggling, you can roll the shoulders, move the neck around. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Dance to the inner song in the body. Good, good, good. Nice. And then we'll start to work through some Sun Salutation. And it may be a little bit different than you're used to, or a bit different than the traditional or classical way of doing Sun Salutation. So we're going to work through each piece, and in the first round we're just going to do more of like a vertical in and up symmetrical version, and then the last two rounds we'll add in some lunge. Okay, cool. So let's start by finding our standing back bend, and your first one here could be literally or just simply taking the arms up, and that might be enough at this point. So you can start taking the arms above the head, finding that standing back bend, and really thinking of the pelvis dropping away from the upper body. Bless you. And then the upper body lengthening away from the pelvis up and back. Yeah, so you can move in and out of that a few times. Yeah, good. Nice. And then we're going to start to roll up and down a few times, yeah? So instead of going through the flow in one piece, we're going to spend a bit more time in each segment. So for this first segment, we're going to start with rolling through the spine and seeing if we can follow the succession of the spine or the curvatures of the spine, yeah? So starting by just dropping the chin, letting the weight of the head fall forward, shoulders rolling, arms dangling, bending the knees at some point. And know that this first pass rolling down doesn't have to be all the way down. So only go as far down as it feels comfortable. Yeah, and then on an exhalation, dropping those feet, or the soles of the feet into the ground as you begin to roll up. Yeah, let that pelvis drop towards the heels as you roll and unravel. Good. So let's try that a few times. And maybe each time you roll down, you go a little further. Yeah, so again, you don't have to go all the way down on your first few. Yeah. And then really check in with the skull, the weight of the skull, kind of giving over to gravity, letting it drop. And then if you also wanted to add the arms to the rolling up and down, so you could inhale and take the arms up above the head, and then curling the fingers towards each other so that the back of the palms start to come together, and you guide the fingers down in front of the face, down the center of the body. Yeah, that's it. Nice. And then maybe if you choose, as you roll up, the arms can come out to the side and back up. Yeah, that's it. Good. Maybe this is your last roll down, and as you come to the bottom here, you can walk the hands, bending the knees, and walk the hands a little out in front of you so you arrive in a downward dog. And you have a few choices here. You can either hang out in downward dog and just kind of walk the dog, walk the feet, or you can lower the knees and move in and out of downward dog as frequently as you like. So again, really thinking about the weight of the pelvis dropping towards the heels, letting the weight of the skull fall forward, let it dangle. Good. That's it. Nice. Good. And then eventually when you come back down onto the knees, we'll find our tabletop or cat-cow prep here. So coming onto the hands and knees and really focusing on what parts of the body are in contact with the ground now. So the hands, the top of the feet, the knees. And then here we can start to introduce a bit of spinal flexion and extension. So you can start to move the spine in those two directions. So I can dome, as I dome the spine up towards the ceiling, letting the weight of the skull drop, letting the pelvis fall towards the heels. That's it. And then as I take my extension, and you may know this already, I'm sure you're well aware of this, but that it's about the lengthening in the extension rather than collapsing in the lower back or looking up towards the ceiling. Yeah, so seeing if you can find that length in the back of the neck and the back of the waist. So something I like to think about in the extension is if there was a string attached to the crown of the head and the tailbone, two separate strings, and then someone's on either end gently pulling those strings away from each other. Good. And then if you wanted to add in a little more movement with these two actions of the spine, you can, in the doming, you can send the pelvis towards the heels as far back as you like, and then bending in the elbows and scooping through. So you're kind of snaking through or waving through the two movements. Good. Good. Nice. And of course, know that at any point you can come onto the forearms if you want to just practice flexion and extension there. Yeah, so that's always an option. And then the next piece to this salutation could be resting in child's pose, so settling the pelvis towards the heels. So they may not make it all the way, the pelvis may not make it all the way to the heels, and that's absolutely fine as long as we send the pelvis in that direction and allow the weight of the pelvis to drop towards the heels. And then letting the skull fall towards the ground in the opposite direction. Okay. Yeah. So in this child's pose, can you experience or sense or encourage those two ends grounding and lengthening away from each other? And then on your own time, you can move into, so you have a couple choices here. From child's pose, you can dome into flexion and walk the hands a little further in front of you and come into a cobra. And if you choose cobra, really focusing on that pelvis and skull lengthening away from each other. So that's one option. If that's too soon or too much too soon, you can come onto the belly and the forearms and practice some flexion and extension here in the upper body. Again, focusing and thinking of the two ends lengthening away from each other. And if that is still not of interest, you can lower the forehead onto the hands, bend the knees, and rock the legs side to side. Good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you can definitely rest the skull, Sue. Yeah, I'm just keeping my head up so I don't crush the mic. Good. Excellent. Yeah. And then when you're ready, we can find our downward dog. So if you want to come back onto the hands and knees, again, on your own time, curling the toes under, maybe walking the hands a little closer to the legs, And on that out breath, sending the weight of the pelvis into the legs and the feet to extend the legs. Good. And again, you can walk the feet a little bit here, move in and out of downward dog. And then eventually your choice, you can either walk the hands to the feet or feet to the hands, whatever is more accessible or easier. And then we're going to roll ourselves up to standing. Yeah. If you're feeling at all dizzy, what I find useful is placing the palms of the hands together and crossing the thumbs and just kind of gazing at one thumbnail. It just allows me to focus on something and bring me back to that equilibrium. Good. Yeah. Good. And then when you arrive to standing, if you want, you can interlace the fingers and take a little bit of side bending. Good. Great. And then another option could be taking hold of the elbows and circling the arms. Good. Great. Excellent. And then eventually releasing. If you want to release the arms, give them a swing or swing side to side. And then we're going to do another round, and we're going to add in a lunge, and I'll give you a few options a few options to choose from how you can get into lunge. Okay, so again, we'll start with finding our back bend, and maybe just do a few up and down, rolling up and down, maybe 2 or 3, and then we'll find our downward dog. Yeah. So starting with our back bend. Finding the length. Good. And then rolling down. So this time, as you roll up and down, if you want, you can add a little more speed to it to offer a little more liveliness in spine. And then eventually we'll come down, walking the hands a little further in front of you. Yeah, finding your downward dog. Again, you can choose to move in downward dog in whatever way feels good. If you want to take the legs a little bit wider. Good. And then here are 2 options you can choose from for lunge. You can either take the right leg. We'll start with the right leg. You can either take the right leg up towards the ceiling and then step through with the hands, or my personal favorite is lowering the heel or lowering the knees and then extending that right leg behind you. And with the balls of the feet on the ground. Yeah, that's it. And then you can roll the ball of the foot. Yeah. You can take that leg across. You can open it out to the side. Yeah, especially in our first go with lunge, this might feel nice, and then you can walk that foot in front of you. Yeah. And so from here, let's really focus on grounding in that front foot. And as you exhale, you can lower the pelvis into the lunge. You can inhale out, exhale in. That's it. And again, as you move in and out of the lunge, can you find the lengthening of the skull away from the pelvis, pelvis away from the skull? That's it. And if it's of interest to you or accessible, you can always walk the hands on the thigh and take a breath or two here. Again, can I find the length? Yeah. Good. That's it. Yeah, definitely use the arms to encourage the elongation. Excellent. And then when you're satisfied, we'll take that right leg behind us, give it a bit of a shake. And then from here, I may bring in any of the movements we did earlier in cat, so you can flex and extend, wave through, or if you want to bring in whatever movement of the torso you'd like, whatever feels good. Yeah. Good. And then we can rest, take a little break in child's pose for about a breath or two. And then from child's pose, we can choose our version of a belly back bend. So that can be, again, from child's, I can move into cat, doming the spine, into cobra, or I can rest on my belly. That's it. Yeah. Excellent. And then as we make our way back, again, your two options here could be, I'm going to go into the lunge on the left side, and that could either be taking that left leg behind me, cross open in front, so there's that version, or I can come into my downward dog and raise that left leg and step it through. So whatever version feels right in this moment. Yeah, big exhales. Yeah, these movements, I think, require a little extra, a little oomph in that out breath. Yeah. Nice. Okay. And again, if you wanted to come upright in your lunge, really focusing on dropping in that pelvis, grounding that front foot. Good. Lengthening the two ends away from each other. Nice. And then when you're satisfied, let's take that left leg behind us, give it a good shake. And we'll find our downward dog, so walking, curling the toes under, walking the hands towards the legs. It's a good opportunity to let the weight of the skull fall and shake it out. Good. And then either walk the feet to hands or hands to feet and rolling back up on your own time. And you can take the arms up above the head, take your side bend. Yeah. And then you can also do boxed arms and circle the upper body, or you can keep the fingers interlaced and the arms extended and take the arms out in front of you. Yeah. Good. Nice. So, how do you feel about doing one more round, starting with the left lunge first, but this time we'll see if we can go through the flow a little more quickly? Yeah? Sound good? Okay. Great. So let's start with our back bend. Good. Maybe a big breath in here to come to neutral, and then exhale, rolling down. Good. Finding your downward dog. Again, here you can choose what version of lunge you want to take, whether it's that left leg up and stepping through, or lowering the knees and extending that left leg back. Good. Excellent. Good. Nice. And then when you're ready, we'll take that left leg back. And you can move this, take a moment or two to move the spine around in whatever way feels good. We can take our little pause in child's pose. Check in with the dropping of the skull and the pelvis. And then find your version of either Cobra or a belly back bend. Good. Good. That's it. And then we can come back to our hands and knees and choose your version of lunge. So again, whether it's downward dog, step through with the right foot, or take that right leg back. Excellent. Yeah. Good. And then we'll make our way back. So taking that right leg behind you, give it a good shake. And then we will find our downward dog. So walking the hands to the legs. Good. Nice. And then, of course, you choose whether, let it all out here. And then you choose whether you want to walk the hands to feet or feet to hands. Taking the arms up, you can take your final side bending. Good. If you want to release the arms and swing them side to side. Nice. And then let's just take just maybe a breath or two or a few moments to just stand in silence, and then eventually we'll make our way back to the ground. But just take that moment to stand and just take note of how you feel in this moment. How does the spine feel? Good. And then eventually, when you're ready, you can make your way back to the ground. And you can do a few things here. If you want to do a check-in with bridge, if you want to do any twisting, you can check in with the Shavasana, your Shavasana, and then eventually finding your final relaxation. So that could be resting back with the legs extended, legs up the wall, or sitting, or whatever calls to you in this moment. Yeah. Yeah, and whatever movements you choose to do, if they're ones that you did earlier on in the practice, again, just take note of any changes. And then whenever you arrive to your final position or final relaxation, then again, take note of how your relationship with the ground has changed now versus the beginning.